So we're going to look at what these tests that we're just talked about are, what they actually look like when you're in a peer-reviewed journal. This way, when you're reading journal articles in the future, you can actually interpret what they're saying without reading the entire article. So here is a study that talks about decreasing assault occurrence in a psychogeriatric ward. So they used this Cohen-Mansfield agitation inventory. They measured the total scale as well as 3 domains. So this table doesn't explain what those domains mean, so we don't really know that, but I'm hoping that they would be explained in the study write-up itself. So here you can see they have those would be your DVs, and then you have pre-intervention and post-intervention mean and SDs. So this is showing you that your IV is the pre-intervention and post-intervention measures. So you can see those mean and SD values, and then finally they have a column for the T difference, which has value, and all of them have an asterisk. So if you go and look at the footnote for that asterisk, it shows that P is greater than 0.05. This means that their results are not significant for any of those values. Typically, the way this is reported is P less than 0.05, not greater than. So that should have been caught. Because what this is saying is basically they found no difference from before to after their intervention. This could be because there was only 8 individuals in the study, so that might be a possible cause. We know that this is a paired t-test because our dependent variable, one of them is total score. One of them is factor 1, another is factor 2, and fourth is factor 3. So those are 4 different tests that were computed. And your IV would be assessment time, pre-intervention to post-intervention. So that is paired, which means we have to use a paired t-test. This table is set up a bit differently. They were measuring the effects of Tai Chi on physical and mental health in college students. So typically, you're going to see for independent and dependent and paired t-tests, you're going to see the DVs on the left side and the IV set up in the top row. In this case, they flipped that. This is most likely due to space they needed to save in the journal, or maybe it's just the convention of this particular journal. But across the top here, you can see that they had 5 dependent variables or 5 domains that they measured. It looks like what they used is the SF-36, which is a quality of life used to measure physical and mental health. Your IV here would be assessment time, measured nominally from before to after the program. Is that paired? Yes. So they're used for each of these a paired t-test. Now, which of these results were significantly statistically different? Well, we can see that the asterisk shows now this time that they were significant at the 0.05 level. That means the p-value for those results were less than 0.05. So vitality was significantly different, role emotion, general health, and overall mental health were significantly different from before to after. Something that they could have improved on is labeling what the range of values for these measures mean. So maybe you don't know what vitality is measured on. Maybe it's measured on a scale of 1 to 60, or maybe it's measured on a scale of 1 to 100. I've worked with this tool, so I know that the range is 0 to 100, with 100 being the best. But they should have included a footnote to describe that in this table, just to make it able to stand on its own. So that's one thing I would have them improve. This table is from a study where they were looking at quality of life in those with migraines. So the table is like the table 1 you created for your exam, where you had to split the table by a variable of interest, only they excluded the column I had you include of the overall sample characteristics. So then you can see that, okay, those values, their means and standard deviations for the ones that are measured nominally, those are number and percents. Okay, that makes sense. Well, we don't know how to test for nominal IVs with nominal DV. So we're not going to worry about the sex and the race for today. But look at the other ones: age, number of medications, number of headaches, and headache intensity. So those are all measured continuously. So let's look at age. For those in the transform migraine group, you can see that was a 41.3 plus or minus 13.2. And in the regular migraine group, their age was 39.3 plus or minus 10.6. How would we know if the test that they performed for significance found that this difference was significant? Well, it shows that a p of less than 0.05 in the footnotes has an asterisk next to the variable name. So age doesn't have that asterisk, so it is not significantly different. Something else to notice is that the student t-test, that's a really old school term for an independent t-test. So if you see that, that's what they're referring to. We know that they used an independent t-test, even if it didn't say it there, because you cannot be in both the transform migraine group and the regular migraine group. So they're independent categories. So the ones that were significant were the number of medications before the first visit, the number of headaches per month, and the headache intensity. One last thing to note is there's a little cross variable, or a cross symbol next to the headache intensity, and that has a little footnote that tells you what the pain scale for headache intensity was. So this is a good example of how to identify what your scale is. So this was a study of psychological distress, sources of stress, and coping strategies in high school students. This table, it looks nice, but it's very confusing because they didn't make their IV stress status 2 columns. They only made it 1. And then they split their DV into 2 rows to have the 2 categories of their IV. So it just makes it confusing to kind of tell the difference of what they're actually showing here. Now you can see the p-value for all of their tests were less than 0.05. They could have taken that whole column out and just used asterisks next to the variable name to show that they were all significant. That would have saved them some space. Then I'm looking at the means for self-distraction: 5.19, 5.55, 5.4. So what the heck does that mean? What was the scale they were using? We don't know here because it's not included in the table. Maybe they were using a scale of 1 to 6. Maybe the scale was 1 to 10. Who knows? And who knows what 5.54 means? Maybe that means it's higher. Maybe a higher number is better. It doesn't tell us, so it's hard to really convey what they're trying to say from this table. So they should have included a footnote about that.